The dwarfs of the Chasm are an ingenious race. They have pioneered many of the greatest technological advancements the old world has ever seen, from gunpowder to gyrocopters to steam-powered drilling machines. In ages past, the runesmiths forged artifacts of power that rivaled the work of the old ones themselves. While the more ephemeral races of men and Skaven have adopted and adapted their initial innovations, only a Wazak would claim that the Dawi weren't there first. Still, this ingenuity is at odds with the traditionalist mindset of many dwarfs. As a people, they almost view innovation as an insult. If it was good enough for their ancestors, then it's good enough for them and shouldn't be changed. The most stubborn Longbeards bitterly grumble about marching to war alongside newfangled inventions like gyrocopters, drake guns, and cannons. In their minds, there is nothing in the world a cannon can do that can't be achieved by a determined dwarf with a hammer. Still, even the most conservative dwarfs reluctantly acknowledge the value in bringing artillery pieces to battle, especially in sieges. When forced to bring war machines, these traditionals will bring forth the most venerated and trustworthy of artillery pieces, one of the only varieties they would ever use: the humble Grudge Thrower. Grudge Throwers were one of the earliest dwarf-crafted war machines to grace the battlefields of the Warhammer world. These catapults have been around for so long that orc and goblin tribes were already fielding crude replicas of them by the time MacLeod first set foot upon the old world, nearly 7,000 years ago. Only bolt throwers can rival them in age. They've earned quite a name for themselves over the millennia, and their reliability ensures that all dwarf holds field a contingent of them to the present day. Even Zufbar, the most technologically advanced of the dwarfish kingdoms, will deploy grudge throwers alongside their newly minted cannons, organ guns, and gyrocopters. They're most commonly found guarding the approaches to dwarf holds, flattening approaching enemies underneath an avalanche of boulders and masonry. Grudge throwers earned their name during the War of Vengeance, when the treacherous elves of Ulthuan turned upon their Dawi allies. Many wrongs were recorded within the Great Book of Grudges, and every dwarf's heart burned with rage. Hammerers and warriors bellowed the elves' wrongdoing as they hewed them down like rotten timber, but the Dawi catapult crews were too far away from their front lines to properly vent their anger upon the Elgi. Instead, they began carving grudges under their ammunition so the elves might understand their transgressions at range as well as in melee. The habit stuck, and the war machines were known as grudge throwers ever after. Over time, the crews began to believe that their catapults were only as good as the grudges they threw, and there may be some truth to this. The dwarves began spending more and more time engaging oaths and grudges upon their ammunition to make their catapults even more dangerous. Amongst the Chasm the most venerable grudge throwers are renowned for firing expertly carved runic boulders into the midst of their enemies, flattening all who would harm the Dawi. In Total War Warhammer 3, Grudge Throwers are a Tier 2 artillery piece on the Dwarf roster. They're relatively cheap, easily accessible in campaign, and do decent work as a crowd clearing tool. Unfortunately, Grudge Throwers are terrible at killing single model entities, and unless you're lucky or skilled, they don't do so well against cavalry either. They're not even the best anti-infantry artillery piece the dwarfs can bring, as flame cannons and organ guns are better at it, in addition to being generally more versatile. That is not to say that grudge throwers are bad, however. They're valuable in the early game, when you can't get access to their artillery pieces. Their range, which is only equaled by cannons, makes them decent at bombarding enemy artillery, though cannons are still better at this. In multiplayer, their low cost and skill at targeting tightly bunched archers or handgun units makes them decent picks against ranged factions, like High Elves, other dwarfs, and the Vampire Coast. All in all, they're perfectly serviceable choices, if the circumstances are right. If they're not right, though, leave the grudge throwers at home. That brings us to the end of our overview of grudge throwers. While organ guns are my favorite piece of Dawi artillery, grudge throwers will always hold a special place in my heart. They were my first artillery piece in Total War Warhammer, and watching orc boys get blown apart in my first few battles of a new Thorgrim campaign never gets old. I also hear they're not bad in the old world either, so I'll see what they can do on tabletop as well as in Total War once I get my army painted. That's all I have for the moment though, so until next time, this has been Sigmar's Chosen, signing off for now.